Please.
He is.
Don't take me serious.
So you're giving us a disclaimer, basically.
Pretty much.
Okay, understood. I get you.
We're missing somebody.
Josh.
We're missing Josh.
Josh? Okay, he'll be fine. Josh will be fine, man. Listen, man, y'all ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Anyways, let's set some ground rules while people are connecting.
Marketing, PR and stuff, but he was doing it for Bernie Sanders campaign.
Yeah,
I'm trying to share the live.
Hey, I'm used to hearing my voice. It's nothing, you know.
Okay.
I am used to it.
Lyra, babe.
Shout out to Reflex. I see you, dog. Shout out to Dan Kasasu. Had some great pointers last episode, man. But anyways, let's set some ground rules, please. Let's respect each other's opinions, please. Let's not speak over each other. I think we have enough time, to tackle this topic. So let's please, I can emphasize this enough. Let's not speak over each other because my fingers are so ready to mute anybody who's about to distract this thing. And I mean it. So let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Couch Talk on Stuck in the Middle podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Uncle AK, and I'm here with my other host, Tutu. What's up, Tutu?
Hello, I'm here.
Hey man, you guys should share this link. For those in the comment section, share with your peoples, your ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends, whichever, your grandma, aunties. I shared it with mine, so do so. You panelists as well. Follow Stuck in the Middle on all platforms, SITM Podcast. The website is sitmpodcast.com. Shop Stuck in the Middle merch. Read our blogs. I'm here with some great individuals. Peacemaker. I see you changed your name from Humble Jam last time. What happened there, bro?
I come in peace. I don't want any trouble.
Hey man, I dig that. Dr. Fim Dizzle.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Shout out to the Africanist podcast.
I said, ladies and gentlemen. We have come here in peace. We have come to support our brother Peacemaker.
Amen.
Because the black man and the black woman, we are the foundation for the future.
Yes, brother.
Thank you for saying that. Joe, I see you. What's up, though?
Back for round 2.
Hey, Smoking Joe.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
That's a sharp brother right there. That's a sharp brother, man. I was listening in. I was like, ha!
Always got the ammo ready.
That's a fact, man. That's a fact. Y'all on the moon. My other Africanist brother. What up, though?
Straight up, bro. I'm happy to be
Thank
here.
you for finally coming on Stuck in the Middle podcast. I've been trying to get you for the longest on here, bro. What's up with that, man?
Listen, you know we family. Y'all done came on our pod. You know what I'm saying? It's all love. We always catch up when we plan. Scheduling was tight, but nothing like a lockdown to keep you at home. You know what I'm saying? So here I am. Better late than never. Shout out to y'all. I love everything y'all doing, though, man. Keep pushing the culture forward, bro.
Appreciate it, bro. I see you came through sleepless, man. You ready to?
He's ready to pick up.
Let me tell you something.
He's ready to show the gun.
This is my Africanist pod fit. You know what I'm saying? I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to share all this too, so I might as well remain consistent. You feel me?
Right.
Yeah, show the gun.
We are not here to fight.
Take them to the gun show.
All right, listen, man. I see the ladies are so serious, man. I had to save the best for last. Not to say you gentlemen are not, great.
Like she ready to fight.
You know what I'm saying?
Today, you look like you ready to fight. We're being peaceful today.
Oh, what? No, I come in peace, right? Peacemaker, I come in peace.
Amen.
This baby, she comes in peace. She looks very sweet. Yeah. I believe it. I believe it.
Thank you.
Hey, listen. That's the voice of Lala, the one and only Lala. What up, Lala?
Hey, okay.
Damn. Okay. Let's try Nora. What's up, Nora? How you doing?
What's up?
Okay. All right, let's try Nancy. What's up, Nancy? How you doing?
What's Listen, what's up, everybody? What's good? What's good?
That's
Hey,
what's up. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. I see how the other two came. It's okay. We'll see. Hallie, you were supposed to come the last time, but you're here today. What up?
Hi guys.
Hey, Holly.
So,
Hey, girl, hey.
I used
before-
PTO to be here today, so I'm taking.
Yes,
Wow.
we
I don't-
appreciate you.
Salute you, sis.
I have a 2-hour break for
Appreciate
this.
you,
So
man. Well, let's make it count. Hey, Holly, where you from, man? Give us a little bit about your background.
like where I was born, or
All that good stuff.
okay. I was born in Salem, Oregon. We moved to Michigan when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I've been living in Michigan ever since. Come from a very large family. There's 11 of us total.
Hi.
So very big, yeah, very family oriented. Went to Grand Valley for my undergrad and graduate, and I'm a licensed master social worker, and I work in an ER. So
Oh, Holly, you are
Thank you for your service.
You are my people.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, so shout out. Your parents, were they born in the States as well?
yes, as
Oh,
far
man.
as I'm
Your
aware.
grandparents? Your grandparents? Just trying to set some, some context here in terms of are you Caucasian, as people say? Are you, like, when it comes to ethnicity, what are you?
I'm a mixture of a lot of different things.
Name them.
What's the meaning?
Okay, so on my mom's side, I'm Native American, French Canadian. My mom's family, a lot of them actually came to Michigan from Canada. On my dad's side, that's where it gets tricky. I know that I'm Spanish and Native American on that side, but I don't know what else I am because my dad never knew his dad and my grandma never spoke about him, so I don't really know.
So cute.
So
Okay.
The Lord is our
Ancestry.com got you, man. You know.
yeah, no.
23 and me.
I need to because I get asked a lot. So
Yeah, definitely. I just said, I had to make sure that the listeners hear that from you and not ask so many questions, in the comment section about who's Ali, where's your blah, blah, blah. But anyways, moving on. Man, we can't see your face, Aisata. Man, you are like all the way down there, bro. Bring the camera to you. Don't be shy.
No, I was eating, so I didn't want to be a little hood rat hoochie mama.
We won't judge you.
I don't believe
What
it.
up, though? What up, though? Hey, everyone, man. She's been to our, regular Stuck in the Middle podcast show. You know what I mean? If you need a wedding cake, remember if you just need a cake, just have it on your table and just look at it, the beauty of it. That's your go-to person right there. Hit up on the gram, man. Man, give them your gram, your IG handle, man, real quick.
Oh, ooh. Again, ghetto hood rat hoochie mama. My IG name is ICU Twigga. Sorry, but ICEYYOUTWIGGUH. And then my baking is the icings on top website, www.isatk.com. All your cupcakes, cakes, decorating, all of that. Holla at your girl. Listen, quarantine birthdays are still a thing. Don't let them
Period.
stop.
Period.
Don't let them
Period.
stop you. We celebrate regardless.
Yeah, I just booked her for my nephew's B-Day in like 10 days.
Nice.
Yes. We still rolling.
Yeah, so.
Shout
All
out.
right. Enough of all of that, man. Enough of all of that. I'm sure you guys will meet on the gram. You know what I mean? DM. Slide in anybody's DM you want. Ladies, slide in the men's. Men, slide in the ladies, whichever.
Don't slide in my own room. Beg.
But anyways, man, let's pick up from where we left off last week, right? So last week we were talking about, should men fight for women's rights, or should women only be responsible for that fight?
Let me put my
Now,
glasses on because I took some notes.
Hold on now.
I am not ready.
Let me set the tone real quick. Like, I know a lot of us want to talk about black men, black women, this and that. I just want to bring all of us to put all of us in one lane, right? When we talk about should men fight for women's right, today I'm referring to black men and black women, right? That's what we're going to talk about, and I want to look at one black. I don't really want to distinguish between black men and black women. I just want to talk about blacks in general. But if you guys really want to go down the rabbit hole of only black women, I'm all for it. but at the same time, I don't want us to, shy away from the fact that we all want black, and men got their own thing that they got to deal with when it comes to being a black man in America, and women got their own thing they got to deal with when it comes to black women in America, and we got things to deal with as together as blacks in America. So I want us to keep that in mind as we, lay our arguments and all whatnot. But not to talk too much, I want to pass this on to Holly.
Okay.
You go first.
What am I talking about now?
Should men fight for women's rights, or should women be the only responsible party to fight for their rights?
I think that when it comes to inequality, like personally, that everybody has an obligation to stand up when they see that something is unequal, that something's not right, that something's not fair. Whether or not somebody wants to step up and fight for that is their own personal choice. But I think that as a human race, we have an obligation to the betterment of each other to step up and fight for the rights of people that are being disenfranchised, that are not, receiving equality. So I feel like as a human being, there is a right to say something, to step up, to try and engage in that conversation. One of the biggest pieces of it is just talking and learning more, so that everybody that's involved is all discussing like the direction that they want to go in regards to achieving equality for that. But I think that the human race as a whole, I feel like when we see that something's not right, that something's not equal, that we should step in and try and do something, no matter our gender.
Nancy.
You said Nancy?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
So in listening to, was it last week's episode? I understood what Wendy was trying to say about like the irony of the oppressors in terms of gender oppression fighting for women's rights. It's kind of like asking white people to fight for the civil rights of black people, and it's kind of funny if you put it in that light. I think what she stated about like the first step for male allies in terms of women's liberation to do is to listen. I think that's an important first step. Listening to the cries for justice of women, especially in our community. I think as an ally, I think making sure that in the men's attempt to help us, that they don't essentially like allow their patriarchy to make them think they're supposed to be at the forefront, right? And like a man can't necessarily be the face of a women's fight for liberation, in the same way that white people can't be the face of Black Lives Matter. And I don't think we necessarily need men on the front lines, but I think it's very helpful to have. I think a lot of the work that men have to do in terms of allyship, when it comes to women's liberation, is more like on the back end, right? Like when you're having conversations with your friends, your homeboys, when you're, shutting down like misogynistic or colorist comments, when you're at work calling out sexual harassment, when you're in the boardroom, if you're a CEO of a company, like making sure that you're advocating for equal representation in the boardroom, right, and equal pay. I think those are the ways that men can serve as allies. But I don't necessarily think it's like a forefront issue with them standing right next to us. I think a lot of the work that has to be done in terms of allyship, men being allies with us, is more so like what's happening in the background.
What is the forefront then?
I think the forefront would look, making sure that the faces of the women who are crying out for justice are the ones that are being seen, that their voices are the ones that are being heard, that their voices and their concerns are the ones that are being acknowledged. I think that's what I mean when I say in terms of like making sure that it's not co-opted by men, like just being careful of that. But yeah, that's my position.
I have a question for Nora. So So Lala posted something on Twitter today. Well, the topic by the end, she mentioned liberation. She mentioned, I'm
the
sure
what?
you said this. She mentioned the word liberation, right? I'm sure you said this.
I said women's liberation.
Yeah.
Women's liberation. Yeah. What's your thoughts to that? Is that the right word to use? Liberation?
Absolutely.
Women's liberation?
Absolutely.
Explain.
Absolutely.
Explain.
I mean, the point is to liberate women from all sorts of gender norms, gender stereotypes, anything that's been said that a woman has to be or has to do. Like, that point is to liberate us from I guess not being able to do and go places that we dream of going places. Liberate us from being only seen in roles such as being a mother, being I think somebody quoted last time, being the creators of a workforce. I think Joe, last time you're the one who, I think it was a quote that you quoted. It was like, women are like the creators of a workforce, and that was I think that was in reference to the fact that women give birth to nations, women give birth to people that then are the workforce, and it's like, women being seen in a different light. So liberation is exactly the right word. Being liberated from not being able to go to school, not being able to reach their full potential because there's some sort of unwritten rule somewhere that a woman can only go this far in society. I think that's a perfect word. And the simple answer to your question is, should men be advocates for women? Of course, why not? Like, why wouldn't, and then if we're speaking specifically Black women, why wouldn't Black men want to be, advocates for Black women's freedom? I mean, Black women have been advocating for Black men since the beginning. Like, so to ask that question, it's like, yeah, like we Black women, we've been there having Black men's back since y'all were born. So why wouldn't it make sense for Black men, if we're speaking that specific context, to advocate for Black women? I think the simple answer is
yeah. On the moon. Man,
yes, sir.
Do you think the word liberation, my guy, do you think that's the right word to use in this context?
I mean, that's a strong word, bro. I don't disagree with what any of the ladies are saying, but what I'll say is that from my perspective, when I think about, when I look at the actual like feminist platform, the women's rights platform and stuff like that, and I look at the types of things that they consider they need liberation from, I don't instinctively associate myself as an African male in the demographic of whatever, 25 to 34, whatever, being someone that is in league with the groups of people that are applying that type of oppression or pressure. Like last week it came up, stuff about women's abortion rights, health rights, Aziz, you are part of some of these debates. And, I saw those things being thrown out and I'm like, yo, like, me being an African male, and every African male that I've ever talked to conversationally, whatever it is, we've never stood there like, oh yeah, women should not have a right to choose. That's not really the angle that we're coming from. You know what I mean? So I like the fact that you set the stage, kind of starting to differentiate that point, So that's why I said I come in peace, because everything that I saw going on last week from a debate standpoint, the hot fire and heat I saw, I'm like, yo, like there's a lot of stuff where we can find common ground and find ways. So at the end of the day, should men be a part of it? I think it's up to women to decide that. But I mean, I think it becomes a stronger movement, period. Like, she said, like, women have always backed up men. Men were fighting for the rights of all Black people. So it makes sense that women would join that fight also, right? So why should we split up now? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Dr. Fimdiza, what do you think?
In terms of whether we should back women in their plight for liberation or for freedom?
Yeah.
Here's my take. I think I spoke with Aziz. We spoke sometimes I think after the last Couch Talk aired about the previous episode, and my take on it is this: I'm all for Black people. I mean, as Black men, especially in, let's say, the United States, whatever, there's so many single parent single mother, raised households. So based, for that alone, the men that come out of these homes, they should have an affinity for women. They should want to, learn their struggles and, help them in their plight to, achieve those goals that they're striving to achieve. I think we should all, help each other out. But what I'm saying is, what I got from it for me is, I feel like we all have our own certain thing, whether it's black men or black women, but whatever it is that we're dealing with does not diminish what the other is dealing with. For example, if we talking like mass incarceration, I would say, not saying women aren't in prisons, but that will probably be more of a black male issue. When you're talking about the difference in pay gap, I'm not saying black men are being paid buku butts, but I would say if we had to, pick one, that's probably an area where maybe black women are, more affected in. And we don't have to look at that and split it up and say one is more important than the other. I mean, we all have our different things that we're trying to, accomplish. And I think instead of trying to say, hey, my struggle is more important or is better than yours or whatever, we should all just, come together and say, hey, we're probably stronger, when we come together, and we should probably empathize with whatever, the other is dealing with. And like somebody said, we have to listen. And then, maybe we'll be able to have a better understanding and, be stronger as one, as a unit.
If I may jump in real quick, I think it's important. Like I wanted to do it, but I think AK did it. Like, we're speaking about women's issue. That does not, and it has never negated issues about black men. So let's not keep, because like to say everybody has a struggle, it's like a passive way of saying, oh, I have problems too. We understand. And like I'm saying, as a community of black people, we've all fought for each other. But now we're talking about women's issues. So let's focus on women's issue.
I think that's what I did.
I mean, you said we all have we said we have this, we have that. Like, I mean, I understand that, but for this conversation specifically, I feel like it takes away from the conversation if you say, oh, black men are incarcerated. We understand that we have think pieces, panel discussions all the time about mass incarceration, how that disproportionately affects the black community. But if we're talking about men advocating for women's issues, then let's be men advocating for women's issue. I honestly don't think it takes anything away from the issues that plague black men, because when the statistics were being given last time, it was apparent that statistically women in general suffer sexual assault. Wendy last I said 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted by men. 1 out of every 3 women. So it's like statistics like that. And then also like there were questions about where this came from. I'm pretty sure all of these statistics are sanctioned by each state. If you're interested, go look them up. But like women are more affected by specific things. So let's focus on that rather than saying.
And that is exactly what I was saying. But this is the thing. I think our own unique experiences make us come into this so biased. I literally was saying that. I wasn't on the episode last week, which was what I was saying. Instead of focusing on, men go through this, women go through that, let us listen and let us empathize. That is exactly what I said. And I say we are better as a unit. But the fact that, you're like, oh, let's do this, that just means I don't even think you got the message that I was trying to say. That is my point. I want us as black people, and I spoke with Aziz, like I said, personally, and we had that conversation. I view myself as someone who advocates for women. I don't think, oh, men's issues or whatever. I'm for one black African people, whatever you call it. And that's exactly what I was saying. But I was just I was just validating that, of course, if you look at stats or whatever, this gender or sex may deal with this more. However, that's not the point. We have to be able to come together and see where one another is coming from and empathize with what they're dealing with.
I want to clarify the word liberation because I think there was a disconnect between women's liberation. A lot of people were feeling like that wasn't the right word that I used when I was promoting this podcast. But women's liberation is how the right for women or women's rights started. That's the name that it started. And as generations go on, as we started tackling breaking down all these different stereotypes and breaking down all these boundaries, we started using new words. So women liberation is the umbrella, and women's empowerment, feminism, and everything under that falls under women's liberation. So I'm going to go back to the origin. Yeah, the appropriate term is women's liberation because we are free in some aspect because the women before us advocated and fought for those rights for us to be free, but we still have a long way to go concerning women's liberation. So I just want to clarify that. I think that was a disconnect.
All right, let me take this to Isata. What do you think about women's liberation? What do you think about should men fight for women's rights? I remember the last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were fasting. So I don't know if like a woman, yeah, okay, you being a woman and a Muslim woman at that, I don't know what it is that you have to deal with. You know what I mean? So please talk to us a little bit about the struggles, you know, when it comes to like Lala said, women liberation. Talk to us a little bit about that from a not just a woman, but a Muslim woman at that.
Well, from a Muslim woman's standpoint, can't speak for everybody, but I feel like ours, we definitely, we go through a lot of struggles, especially when it comes to men, because they've been positioned to kind of have like power. So like the fact that I don't wrap my hair and I don't like, you know, I'm not a hijabi and all this stuff. Even when it comes to Ramadan, there's specific times where like if you are menstruating, you're not allowed to pray or fast. So it's a lot of like little sly comments where if they will see you eating, they will like ask you like, oh, why aren't you fasting? And it's just like, first off, A, mind your business, but B, it's just like, you know, you obviously know that there's a time when, or it's always kind of like they're trying to like come at you, you don't cover, if your clothes is too tight, like if you're not as religious, I feel like we get a lot more, we get scrutinized a lot more than the males who are out here like doing drugs and doing whatever that they want to do because they're a man. And we don't really have much, like especially in places more on the eastern side. Yeah, the like Middle Eastern countries where it's kind of a man's world that women are just living in. So we'll be fasting all day. We don't break fast until like 8 o'clock. So we'll about to be breaking fast now. And me and my mom will be in the kitchen like all day cooking, and the men in the house just kind of like chill. And then when it's time to break fast, like that's when they come in and not even like help set a table. Like they'll just come in and start eating, and then that's it. So it's like we have to literally fast all day, can't eat, can't do anything, but we're slaving in the kitchen all day just so everybody or the men can have something to eat. And it's always kind of like, oh, serve your husband first, do this first. So I feel like we definitely go through a lot on our side in terms of and the men do not, I think they like it. I won't say they like it, but they're so used to it that like they don't even see any wrong in it. So we don't, if you want to call it liberation, freedom, feminism, that don't really exist a lot in the Muslim community, but I don't want to really say that like that. And then people,
I see baby like that. I've never seen the American platform that has so much, you know, like STEAM movement, Me Too, all that. I've never seen them address those types of issues. I've never seen it.
Exactly.
Wait, what?
I've never seen them addressing those types of issues. I've never seen
You mean intersectionality issues that deal with your different personalities and identities and characteristics?
No, I'm talking about
Muslim
religion specific.
That counts as intersectionality.
No,
What is
I've seen them mentioned as like
intersectionality?
as a footnote, as something there. But when I see the mainstream message, the mainstream issues that are being tackled, I don't hear those types of issues being mentioned. I don't.
So
Like
Yeah, hold
like
on.
that like
Hold
the
on 1 second.
Ashley Judd when they did that women's march or Women's Day. Do y'all remember that?
Is it?
Hmm?
Y'all don't. Ashley Judd, she's a white woman. It was like Women's March or Women's Day. It was like 2 years ago. I
Oh,
think
the
that's what.
footballer.
No, she's an actress. But I think that's what y'all was talking about. Like, whenever we're celebrating women and we're bringing women's issues to the forefront, he's saying like they never bring those type of issues out.
So
I'm saying
white
they're not
white.
representing
Okay.
those types of issues in the
So
mainstream of their issues that they cite.
Yeah, can we just clarify something? Nora, speak.
Okay, white feminism, we don't mess with that because they have problems that we're obviously not addressing the key issues. Like Lala, something I learned from Lala, and it's the intersectional feminism like that deals with the intersecting personalities of women, Black women, Muslim women, trans women, women of color, brown women. White feminism doesn't tackle that. So I would kindly tell to you or any of the men here that I'm sorry, white feminists do not represent who we are as intersection.
It does not at all,
Okay.
nearly to the rim. So when you said that they're different, they don't
Lala, hold on 1
representation
second.
of activists that
Lala,
don't
1 second.
represent
Lala, 1
like
second.
Muslim women. Okay, go ahead.
Lala, 1 second. Before you continue, let me ask Nora this. When you say white feminism, you don't count that. Why do you generalize then by saying women?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon?
No, you said you don't count white feminism in this, right? So I'm thinking white women, right? So when you talk about women, and like, okay, from the jump, I specified Black women. Then we now talking about women in general, and then you say, oh, white feminism is not. Like, can we stick to one thing, please? I mean, like, if you're going to say women, I'm thinking Black, white, whichever. But if you're going to separate white feminism, then help me here.
I would say it's a nuanced conversation. I'm going to use Joe's words because last conversation Joe was using nuance a lot. It's a nuanced conversation, and like the reason why. Okay, first of all, we use women because we're all women, but as a Black woman, as a woman from the African community, my experiences are different. As a Muslim woman, my experiences are different. Like the feminist movement, I would say, like if you've read anything from Chinua it like she speaks about how that's completely different, like the white femme that's completely different from what Black women, specifically African, deal with in a post-colonial Africa. So like there are a lot of experiences, which is why Lala's always talking about intersectionality in terms of in feminism, because like the feminism that's broadcasted, the one that's like like how do you call it, like socially acceptable, those white feminism that doesn't represent who we are. So like as a Black woman, anytime I speak, I'm speaking about intersectionality and feminism because that's what represents me as a Black woman. That's what represents somebody as a Muslim woman of color. So like I'm gonna try to clarify, but when we're speaking, especially as Black women, we're speaking based on our experiences from our point of view. So that just any confusion, if you ask, I'll clarify. But that feminism, it's not representative, honestly, of who.
And there's a subterm called womanism that
womanism, yeah. So maybe we should just start saying womanism instead of feminism as a general, because I say I'm a womanist.
Okay, I bring it up because I refuse to accept the notion that you're going to say men, and I'm like, I'm not the same as my white counterpart. Like they make the rules. I don't get to make the rules, so don't put me in that same category as them.
But the social
in this
that we always have these conversation in have always been Black men, Black, African men. Like when we speak and when we hold this conversation, it's always been Black men, African men. So when we say men, I think like subconsciously you should think like your peers and your counterparts.
I refuse because I want to take your word for it. I want to take your word for it. Like, say what you mean, I mean what you say, right?
Okay. Next.
But anyways, Thank you. Please, let's just stick to Black men and Black women. That way we know exactly. Since you're speaking from experience, let's speak from my experience. I cannot say what a white person, got to deal with. I cannot talk on that. You cannot talk on what a white feminist, got to deal with or what they about, because that's not your experience. But anyways, let's move on. I wanted you to define what was that word? Intersectionalism.
Like Lala,
Which
Lala, you were gonna do that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
wanted you to find out.
intersectionality is just looking at yourself as a whole person. So it's basically asking a question, who am I? I'm going to take myself. My name is Imlara, and I am a Christian. That's religion. I have privilege because I'm a Christian. I am a woman. I am a Black woman. I am able-bodied. I am educated. I am middle class. And there was
You're straight. You're
I'm heterosexual. So there's 7 isms in intersectionality. And so when you look at those isms, you see which ones do you have privilege in and which ones do you not have privilege in. I'm Black. I don't have privilege being a Black person in the world, period. I'm a Black woman. My privileges are limited. I'm a Christian. I have privilege being a Christian because not a lot of people would question my Christianity, or the Christians in the world aren't being oppressed compared to other religion. I am able-bodied. That means I don't have to think about being disabled. I don't have to think about, is there a ramp there? I don't have to, I'm just able-bodied. What else? I'm educated. So I have the privilege of speaking well. I have the privilege of getting a higher education. What else did I say, Nora?
Heterosexual.
Heterosexual, yes, a big one. Heterosexual. That means I fit the society norm and the norm of who I'm supposed to be. So I don't have to worry about my identity and my gender and people backlashing. So that's just your intersectionality personality. And when you talk about intersectionality, feminism is when you look at those personality and you fight for those that need, just those that need basically help, those that, and like I can use my privilege as a heterosexual person to be an ally to someone who's homosexual and facing backlash and all that stuff. I can use my privilege as a Christian and be an ally to my Muslim brothers and sisters who are facing hate. I can use my privilege as being an able-bodied person to someone who's disabled and fight for their rights. So that's intersectionality. Feminism is just fighting for the rights of your different characteristics or different core personalities that makes you, basically. If that makes sense.
So we are good human beings.
I am still trying to process that. That's a lot.
I just want to ask one question on that. Do you feel that intersectionality helps you, and as far as what you're trying to overcome, and in what ways?
Intersectionality has definitely break down a lot of things, because I feel like as a social justice warrior, I tend to fight for so many things. Like I'm fighting for the rights of women, I'm fighting for the rights of being Black, I'm fighting for the rights of this and that, but it's just like those, and all those things intersect. All those things make me who I am. And so it just kind of breaks down my activism and helps me, I kind of like prioritize them. So when I walk in a room, the first thing someone's gonna see me is I'm Black. And the second thing someone's gonna see me is I'm a woman. And so those two personalities are very highly oppressed worldwide. And so that's something that I advocate more for, if that makes sense. But then that doesn't mean that I can be an ally using my other personalities, which I am more privileged to do. Did I answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, Tutu, you look very bored over there. We gotta hear something from you, man.
Who? I'm literally just listening to everybody's opinions. I'm literally just listening.
What are your?
But what are your opinions?
Honestly, I am staying neutral on this, but I do agree with what some of the ladies are saying, though. But at the end of the day, I just feel like, okay, this might come off wrong, but I don't want y'all to take it like, because I'm like I said, I'm staying neutral, but I just feel like
speak for mine.
We're yes, I'm all for my ladies and this and that, but it's just like we kind of need to. I feel like it's just always like, yes, we're talking about ladies, but it's a lot of ladies, and we kind of don't understand. I think we're not kind of sitting back and taking in what the guys are saying. So it's like we're not seeing what everybody's perspective is. And I totally get what you guys are saying. Like I understand what the ladies are saying. I get what everybody is saying, but it's just like, let's also take into account that these men might be going through something too. So it's not like I get what they're saying. It's not like they're not trying to advocate for us, but let's just sit down and listen and actually see what they're trying to say and get it from their perspective. That's literally all I'm saying.
We all need to be vulnerable.
You know what? I also think. Oh, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
No, finish your statement.
I also think that like this is where intersectionality plays a really good role, because as a Black woman with a Black man, we share the common, like, you know, like we're both Black. So like as a Black woman trying to help out, I can relate to you as a Black man a little better than maybe some of your colleagues at work that are all men. You guys have like a certain, like, you know, as men, you guys are, as men that are educated, have work, or able-bodied, or hetero, you guys have a certain privilege in the workplace. But then when you turn around to your white white coworker, they can't, like, you know, they can't, you know, meet you at that level because they don't understand what it means to be a Black man in America, even if you are privileged with an education, able-bodied, this and the third. So I think this is where intersectionality actually kind of helps too, like in terms of, like, you know, being able to meet at a certain level, Black man to Black woman. So I don't necessarily think that, like, but anyway, Nancy, go ahead.
Nancy, you're going to say.
Also, because I mean, I thought one of the main things we're talking about is women's liberation, right? So if we're talking about the plight of women, we have to actually make sure that the forefront of what's being said are the issues of women in their process or their journey to gain full liberation. So that would mean that the men would have to listen to us in this conversation specifically. And then, yeah, when we start breaking off into how discussing the Black intersectionality of feminism is important. Number one, you're putting a face to an issue that is not at the forefront of feminism or white feminism. I don't necessarily identify as feminist. I identify as womanist, which is Black feminist, because there is a differentiation.
Could you please differentiate for us?
Yeah.
For those who don't know.
Yeah, I feel like with as the womanist, what makes us different in our plight and our fight is that I feel like we're actually advocating for the right of all women, especially because most Black women are seen as bottom of the barrel in terms of picks, and we address and especially those on the margins, and we address a lot of the race and class issues that like feminism doesn't, right? And I also think that womanists are a lot more communal by nature because we are Black. So our approach to liberation is, in a way, we see the value of both masculine and feminine energy working together. It's not just like us. We're not saying that we don't need men. We're not saying that we hate men. We're just saying that these are the ways in which in our communities, we need to find equity and equality within these situations, be it, you know, economically, you know, academically, socially, whatever. So for me, that's the difference. I don't think with feminism or white feminism that there's an advocate for those on the margins. I don't think it addresses issues of race and class within the gender. And a lot of times, the one thing I don't really like with white feminist movements is that they kind of use us as pawns in the scheme of things. Like they use our stories and our struggles to like uplift their platforms, and then when they get what they want, they kind of leave us again in the trenches. So that's why I personally don't identify as feminist, but that's why that intersection is important, because our voices can be heard. And I'm sorry, let me see.
Can I add something? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
There's a famous womanist. If you guys haven't, she's Egyptian. I think that's where I first learned about the womanist term. And Said, she wrote "Woman at Point Zero." When she was being asked explain the difference between being a womanist and a feminist, she said that, you know, I think one of her plights with white feminists or feminists, like, you know, Western feminists, is that there's normally an emphasis on like sexual liberation, like, you know. It's like a large emphasis on the sexual liberation of women. But she was just like, as a womanist, she's more interested in fighting for women's liberation on all accounts, like liberation with your health, your education, sexual liberation. It's not just like how are you being liberated sexually, it's how are you being liberated mentally, emotionally, and things of that nature. So it was like basically an all-encompassing feminism, not just like let's focus on how we can, like we can recognize you more as a sexual being, or how you can be whatever you are sexually. So yeah.
I haven't heard two people's voices on this panel. Sorry, we're gonna come back to you, please. Peacemaker and Joe, I have this question for you, right? We hear a lot about men don't listen, or let me stick to my own rhetoric: black men don't listen, black men don't listen, black men don't listen. What do you guys think about that statement? What do you guys think about that statement?
Well, you were frozen. We didn't hear you.
Oh, my bad, y'all.
I can't think about it. I didn't hear it, bro.
Listen, we hear a lot about men don't listen. Men don't listen. Black men don't listen. A Peacemaker and Joe. I'll start with Joe, actually. What do you think about that statement, bro? What do you think about that statement?
That's a tough one. I want to say there's truth to that because, and it's so difficult to kind of categorize it or generalize it because, you can bring up that argument that there are, good black men, ones that are listening and their voices are not heard, they're kind of the minority, or they're, it's very difficult for them to get praise for the things that they do in light of all the others that are doing things incorrectly. So it's very difficult to put a general statement, but I would say that we can still do a better job of listening, and that will be evidenced by the actions that we take. It's not going to come from what women are saying. It's not going to come from the praise in the media, whether it's outside of our communities, our own communities. I think it's just going to come from the actions that we take. And just to speak to what a lot of the ladies have been saying, I do think that a lot of what needs to happen has to happen internally. So as far as what can we do better to listen, as you've mentioned already, we do need to have different kind of conversations amongst ourselves as men. And then secondly, back that up by what are we doing in our Black communities that now crosses over into the spaces that we share with women or the interactions we have with women. So it's going to be a phased approach, but like I said, we can still do better. And it's going to require us to also not shy away from being having a seat at the tables where these discussions are having. Women often talk sometimes about how, certain things that they deal with as women, men just, oh, I don't want to hear that. I'm going to go in my corner. You deal with that. That's your thing. But we do have to be willing to ask questions and actually be genuine and wanting to listen so that we can provide whatever it is that we can that's useful.
Coming off what Joe said, I was going to say, that's a great segue to what I was going to say. It's all about space, right? So Black women have space to talk about Black women issues. White women have space to talk about white women issues, right? But oftentimes when Black men come into these Black women spaces, they want to say, but what are we going through? But what about us? And they want to overtake these spaces and they want to fill up these spaces. But it's just like, whoa. We need this space to talk about our issues and work it out. Do better by becoming a better ally. Do better by listening to us. Do better by hearing us, and supporting us. Not saying this is what you need to focus on, this is what you need to do, but what do you need? What do I have to do to make sure that you obtain equality?
But sis, don't you feel like we also need to be able to give that back to them as well?
We definitely back since.
I was asking because I'm just hearing like they need to be able to understand what you're saying.
It's time they reciprocate. We have been given back.
But that's
no, I get what you're saying. I get exactly what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with it, but I'm just saying it's going back to the whole like, yes, this is what we want, but in order to, you got to make sure if you reciprocate, you got to be able to give it back. So that's literally all that I'm saying.
I understand, and we have been given back.
But that's my thing.
Black Panther movement, Martin Luther King, the march, we have been there. Black women have been in the forefront.
That's a black people issue. Exactly. That wasn't a
Women
black.
suffrage did not fight for segregation.
You was fighting for all of us, not just
Yeah,
black.
but we're saying that like it was an all people, just like black women's issues are all black people's issues. We need black men to also not take a passive sort of approach, but an active approach. Doesn't mean you come and over like take it, but not just sit back and be like, all right, it's a woman's topic. Let's not. But like, yo, like you guys were there when it is black women's issue is an issue for all black people. So let's take a more active role. It's the same thing. But like when but go ahead.
But my thing is the approach as if like we are the cause of the oppression. She said we've been counting y'all for how many years? Like what? Like how? Like you're talking about isms and stuff like that, different levels and categories of common experience, right? So we may have a lot more common ground versus the white feminist movement and white men. And you understand what I'm saying? So that doesn't immediately mean I'm your enemy. When Icy Baby told her story, I immediately empathize with that. I'm like, boom, that makes sense. Like, yo, that I see that right here. That makes sense. Yo, I'm from Ghana. You understand what I'm saying? My father is Ashanti. We have a matrilineal culture. We have matriarchs in our family. We trace our lineage through our grandmothers and our mothers. We don't even consider ourselves to even like really have grandfathers or follow their families. You understand what I'm saying? So the way that I view gender, the way that I see culture is completely different than the main narrative of what I hear. So what I'm saying is that you don't need to approach me as if I'm your enemy. Like we can build stuff. We can talk about it. You don't have to tell me that, oh, sis, no, not that. No, not at all. I don't see it that way at all.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, when women, I get it, but the thing is, I think a lot of times there's this defense mechanism that you're already coming into it, like you don't think men will understand. So there's that approach. And what I'm saying is also provide that safe space for men to be an ally. Don't come in and say, because I see it all the time. And like Joe said, this is not there's some good guys. I will agree. Like I think more men do need to, maybe step up in terms of majority of men. There are those men that, doing what they do, but we're talking majority as a whole. But what I'm saying is for women, you guys need to not just come in there like expecting the worst from the brothers. Like we have eyes and we see it.
Right,
and
we don't. But when you come into my space as a black woman, I'm not shifting it to make you feel comfortable.
Then you don't need. Then leave me alone. I'm not helping your ass. Like if you
what?
I'm just saying.
You cited isms of common ground though. So what you're saying is that all the isms we share do not matter. So don't tell me about your isms then.
Then
you're talking about the white feminist platform.
Yeah, right? Like get lost. If we're supposed to work together
away from the white feminist platform, you said okay, then it don't matter because the common ground we share don't matter. Then.
Yeah,
so
don't come.
Let me add something real quick. So this is one of the things I've noticed. And you've mentioned it a couple of times or harped on it about this Western ideologies or Western influence. I was actually reading a book. It's called Readings in Sociology. And it talks about how basically, to put it, because people always ask me, when I was living abroad, what is American culture? Is it hot dogs? Is it the flag? Is it 4th of July? It's very difficult to define. But in the book, they mentioned that pretty much, at least the assumption from what the book was saying, was that American culture is pretty much rooted in materialism. And I think we have to sometimes take more cognizance of what it means as for us as Black people, what our culture actually is. Typically within African communities, at least what you can broadly define our most unifying cultural aspect is community. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at those boxes that we tick on forms that says, what's your race? It groups us all into one group, irrespective of all these isms. And the irony is that the outsiders see us more unified than we actually act in a unified manner. So when we talk about these things, we have to be mindful of the fact that, just because someone is challenging you doesn't mean they're your enemy. The enemy is the person that's trying to put you down. Right. So it's, like I said, we know this, it's very subtle, but I just kind of want to bring that back in and emphasize, like, there's an influence there of, you might not want Western women in your struggle, but the influence from their ideology comes through in the actions, like he's saying. If it's, oh, you know, why are you coming at me like this? We're on the same team. Like if we're gonna fight against each other, it's already defeated. They won't even have to do anything to us.
I like
So
this guy.
that's something we have to get better at, where it's like he said, if you want us to be in your space, and that comes with certain rules, we need that same energy back, that tenderness to say,
All I'm
hey,
saying.
let's communicate.
That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
Aziz, hold on. Aziz, before I come to you, man, Holly took up work, man. She's been sitting there so quietly, patiently waiting. Hey, Holly, please erupt. The floor is yours.
Show us Pepper.
My whole thing, and that this is why I'm just kind of sitting back and listening. I'm somebody that really, when people come to me with issues, I'm a social worker, so I like to listen and really understand first, because I think one of the main things to keep in mind about this discussion too is like listening to understand, not listening to respond. Like that's a huge thing. Like we're all here to talk about where we're coming from and our ideas and how we can make this better. And the way that we're going to be able to get that across is if we're all listening to understand each other and figure out how we can bring all that together to unify, and not just listening to have a response and, you know, to throw something back. And I think it's really important too, like some people mentioned, like the approach. Like, yeah, if you're coming into, you know, my spaces, we're referring it to have this discussion, all I ask is that you come with is respect, but the way that I approach it is also very important, because if somebody's coming to me to discuss this and I'm just immediately coming at them, you know, with everything that's been pent up, because there is a lot of pent up hurt from this that people might not even realize that they're exuding when they talk to people about it. If they're coming to me and I'm just going right at them, we're not going to get anywhere. If they come at me with respect in my space and we can just talk about it, and it's not just attacking one another, and we're listening to understand, and we're not listening to just respond to each other, I think we'll get much further in this conversation, and it'll be a lot better in trying to bring everyone together and unify to be able to be on the same page or near the same page and support each other in the topics and the ways of moving forward to push this issue. So I think that's one really important thing, is just really stepping back, and you may have something to say right then and there, but like just listening, kind of taking it all in of what they're saying, and then like understanding first and then responding. I think that helps a lot in everybody kind of trying to come together and unify.
Did I say this the wrong way? Because I feel like everybody said what I just said, but I don't know.
I want to add one thing to that, and this speaks to what you were talking about. What are the solutions going to be? An interesting concept, and I kind of deal also in the social space as well right now. One of the interesting concepts that I've come across is this idea of crossing over some of these boundaries, because a lot of us, for the most part, are actually privileged one way or another, even if it's just living, working in America. And we sometimes become detached with people's struggles. And one of the things about social work is that when you work in less privileged communities, you start to learn the deep roots of what's actually going on. So it's not this passive sort of typical Western, well, I think that's what they're going through, or the data tells us this is what they're going through. No, you have to be at the grassroots level. So we do need to make more of an effort of just crossing these barriers and listening to people who might not be in the same position as us, because that's going to build like our muscle as far as empathy goes, so that moving forward, when we do have these discussions, it's not from this place of, well, I don't see why that makes sense, or I don't understand you. So our understanding and empathy kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Peacemaker.
Peacemaker.
I just want to start off by saying I'm a genuinely peaceful guy. I just want to start with whatever I'm saying with that. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the group of women I had a conversation with earlier this week. So I talked to a lot of people from last week to this week, and I was invited to a Zoom kind of get together by Uncle AK. Shout out to Uncle AK for that. And I was talking to three women, Ella B, Sess, and Joe. And one of the things that was very apparent right off the bat when that meeting started was these women were very attentive. They were very aware, and they were okay with me being vulnerable, and I felt safe talking to them about how I felt.
Wow.
I think everybody's kind of echoing the same thing. It's your approach. it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And maybe if we fix that, we would actually be in a position where we can actually make progress.
Can I say something? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I think there are two things happening. And I see both sides. Like Lala was saying, when you bring someone into your home, you're not supposed to shift your standard of being for, you know, whoever is coming, right? Usually if you're coming to someone's space, you're supposed to respect the space and honor the space. But at the same time, I do believe we also need to have more grace towards each other in the way we approach and speak to each other. That is definitely true. But I'm seeing even in us vocalizing what we feel like needs to be worked on. I feel like instead of listening, I feel like there's a lot of defense coming up. I feel like a lot of the men are feeling as though what we're saying is an attack on them when it's not. It's just us speaking our plight, speaking our issues in hopes that they can listen and we can work together to change. So when that defense comes up for us, we rightfully also want to get right, and we also want to get our points across. And so then it just, you know, temperatures start fuming and then messages get lost. So I think we kind of just need to be gracious towards each other. But I think listening on the men's part, I feel like maybe not interpreting what we're saying as an attack on you, right? Our liberation does not mean you losing, us losing respect for you, or you losing your power in your space, or us trying to demean you or effeminate you in any way. Like that's not what we're trying to do. That's not what we're saying. So I don't want that to be mistaken. And then the second thing is I'm a very action-based person. So I think maybe shifting the conversation to more actionable items. I believe it was Minta who said that, you know, in his age group, did I say that correctly? I'm sorry.
Yao.
No. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Within the 25 to 34 age group, that he's not necessarily sure what actionable items he can, you know, put forth to combat, you know, the issues within women's liberation. And even though, you know, most of us at our age may not have, you know, legislative power, judicial power, or whatever, there are still things you can do within your community, within your homes, within your church space, within your academic space that can help fight the oppression that women face on a day-to-day basis. So maybe us listing those items so that the men feel more empowered to, you know, be allies with us in this space, so that we're not always, we're not focused on, you know, the oppression Olympics, as I like to call it, maybe more helpful instead of, you know, going on and on. So
Can I be honest? From my personal experience, one thing that I've seen is that, you know, especially like, you know, women that maybe identify as maybe Black feminists or wominists, there's this way that they, you know, tend to approach certain conversations, that it's like, no, it sometimes is dismissive in regarding to how, you know, what the other person has to say. For example, I'm going to give you an example. Okay, I think Moon Man, you're privy to this.
Yes, sir.
There's a kid that's currently staying with myself right now that's from Ghana. He's 16. I can, you know, I can say, hey, this is how we do things here in America. You're coming into my home. You follow my direction. I'm doing you a favor, this, that, and the third. However, that is not what I see as the best approach, because he has spent 16 years of life somewhere else learning how to function a certain way. So I have to first understand where he is, and you know, in order to be able to kind of bring him up to speed. But I can't expect him to kind of, you know, just adapt like that. And so in terms of that, I understand, like, yo, you it's all about, trying to, deal with the, injustices that, women deal with and focus on liberation. But like I think Holly said, it's all about and Aziz as well. It's also the approach matters as well, and not to say, oh, this is my space, this is so I'm not caring. No, that's really not gonna get you probably what your goal is, and if the point is to get the goal accomplished, then also look at the approach. And what I was saying earlier is like, like as he said, when he was on a Zoom, he felt like it was a safe space. If I'm coming into something and I already feel like, you already looking at me like I'm the problem because I would not understand, then it's like you're holding me, already blaming me or holding me accountable for something that, I'm trying to be part of the solution here. And I think if we're able to just, maybe change our approach, even though it is your space, that, changing your approach doesn't, mean, oh, it's no longer your space. It's just like, this person is coming from somewhere else. Let us understand, but keep the aim about women's liberation. And I think that will, still get the job done. That's.
Can I so Dr. Oluwafemi, can you clarify your point about Black feminists? Like, can you clarify?
There's my point with that is,
sure.
yeah, there's always, from my experience, like I said, there's this defense that is like, you're not gonna understand where I'm coming from because you haven't had my experience. So there's this level of like I said, this tone or this dismissiveness, and I'm like, okay, I'm not claiming that I do understand. I'm not claiming that I lived your life or I've had the same experiences. But one thing that I'm able to do is I can empathize.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a mental health therapist. I sit across clients. I've been therapizing for about 7 years. I sit across people I haven't gone through what they have went through. So I'm not saying that I'm affected, in the same way as you are as a Black woman. But what I want to do, I want to understand. Even all Black women don't have the same experience.
Yeah.
So I want to understand as an individual. I want to understand your experiences. Then I can know, which way can I, assist you or whatever. For example, myself, you talk about, I think Nancy talked about there's things you can do at your church or whatever. Moon Man, you privy to this. I started a mentorship group in my church just for teenage girls. I could have said, there's teenage boys in my church. There's a reason why I didn't choose to, work with them. I'm like, I felt like the girls are, I know what they go through, especially as they get older. So I'm like, I want to get them while they're 11 to like 15, and as they prepare to, hit that age where, things start getting real. And in doing so, I invested my own time and funds that nobody was giving me that. I didn't get no accolades for that. It's just something that I wanted to do. So, but it's like, I feel like, just don't assume that, this person is not gonna care because maybe as a whole, the society as a whole, or the majority of society seems to not just give a damn. But don't assume that, everybody will take that approach. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just a lot of different like levels of male experience. Then you go to Black male experience, then African male experience, and like even within our, like I was saying, our demographic of African males, like we even get together, like, this is 2020. Like I'm saying, we have our own podcast. You know what I mean? We get together, we even talk about like the problems we had, like relating with our fathers and those things they did that we can never see eye to eye with. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, I ain't no saint. I'm not saying that, but how can I even begin to understand the platform where I'm trying to seek to try and understand it, or I mean, I've even been in a room with brothers who have daughters. You know what I'm saying? Like young baby daughter girls. You don't think that they want to? I mean, I'm not trying to put your business out there, bro, but you don't think that that they want to take something positive from an interaction? You know what I mean? But it's like, oh, when we're approached as if like we've chosen to be some sort of enemy or like roadblock, that's a big turnoff. I want to get up and walk out. I've probably done it before. You know what I mean? But so.
Mm-hmm.
No, only because I was just about to say, like, I feel like everybody's talking, but I don't even know, like, I don't know what we're talking about. Like, everybody's just kind of, like, saying things, and it's just like, are we talking about the prompt? Like, the prompt was, should Black men support Black women? But I feel like everybody's just, like, making points, but nobody's saying anything about what the prompt is. And I don't know if I was just confused because I wasn't here on the last conversation, but like, are we going off of the question, or are we just going about like how we feel? Because nobody has kind of said anything. And when it was brought up, I think somebody said, I forgot who it was, but they were just like, oh, we don't really need you to fight the forefront. So it's just like, so what are we talking? So what are we here? What are we doing?
Right. So that was me. I made that statement. In terms of being the face of the movement and in terms of being the face of women's liberation, I think women should be at the forefront in terms of the actual forefront fight. But when I was saying that I'm more of an action-based person, I think it would be helpful for us as women on this panel so that we can come to a solution and assist men in understanding how we would want them to help us in this fight, listing out ways in which, you know, we personally think would be helpful in the fight for women's liberation. So maybe all of us can go across the board and list some things, actionable items. What'd you say, AK? Yeah. So, yeah, no problem. I think I mentioned earlier, if you are chilling with your boys, like I'm sure you guys have your, you know, you guys chilling your man cave, wherever you are, at the bar, whatever, at the house, chilling, and conversations that may come up about women that may sound misogynistic, colorist in any way, anything that you know that is just out of line. Like, make sure that you're holding your boys accountable. Make sure that you're correcting them when they say things that you know are condescending about women, that are rooted in repressive thoughts about women. If you are, you know, if you're in church, if you're someone who's active in your church, making sure that when, say, a leader in the church doesn't want to involve, you know, women in ministry, speaking up in that way. If you are, I don't know, if you're someone who, you know, is a CEO of a company, if you are in boardrooms in very high places, making sure that you're advocating for equal representation of women in the boardroom. So for me, those are just things that I'm thinking off the top of my head, and there are a lot more, but there's a lot going on right now. So I would like to give other women a platform to also give solution-based items.
I think, kind of going off what she said, like something that I think would be really helpful, just like basic level, is like changing the narrative. Like she said, when you're talking with your guys and having these conversations, like being the one that is able to step up and say like, wait, what did you just say? Like, that wasn't right. And kind of changing the narrative within your group of men. Or, you know, even if you're like talking with people about like, yeah, I was talking to this person, you know, with this woman about how we can like help and assist. And even like just getting it out there that having these conversations, like that it can go well and that we can work together, and changing that narrative. Because even right now, we're all just talking about how we can, you know, even just have the conversation to where people can hear each other. So when that occurs, and then like letting other people know, like, yeah, I had this conversation, you know, we were able to meet in the middle here, this is our plans, and like just getting it out there that even like, yeah, we could have this conversation without people getting upset, like, and these are the plans we're taking. I think like just changing the narrative at the very basic level is really huge. And like she said, you know, just kind of correcting people when you hear them saying things, and trying to bring it more into a positive light when you're talking with like fellow men about these issues.
You literally took everything I was going to say, girl.
Oh, I'm sorry, girl.
No, never mind. I said everything I was going to say.
I would say
The same thing Holly was going to say. Accountability at the end of the day, change the narrative. Honestly, that's just what it is. Like basically everything that Nancy's saying too, and everything that Holly is saying. Basically, just let us not just be so defensive, and let's just take accountability. We're not enemies, like everybody would say. We're not enemies. Let's just all unite, simple, and work it out. Like we're not here to make war with anybody. That's honestly how I see it.
I see, baby. Was that like? Is that what you were alluding to, or did you have something else in mind that you wanted to hear?
No, like that's kind of just, I just wanted to know where the conversation, I just felt like we just weren't talking about things. I felt like everybody was trying to like defend their case, but it's kind of, I just wanted to figure out like if we were gonna, like, I just wanted to see the direction of the conversation. But I feel like, honestly, I feel like Black men should be at the face, not the face. I don't think there's, not the face, but I feel like it's not it shouldn't only be about, oh, well, when you're talking to your friends, granted, like that's just common decency and human being like courtesy. Like if you see a man going out sad over a female or like disrespecting a female, yeah, check him about it. But like all of that.
Going outside.
Females? I don't listen. I'm not one of those type of. I don't even know what to you. Yeah, that I'm not there yet in my fight of life where I feel like females is a it's a gender, females. So I'm gonna say females personally, but I'm also not a ism. Like I'm not a feminist or a womanist. Like I just feel like everybody. I'm a person. I'm like fighting for everybody. It's kind of like, I don't know. I'm just not there yet.
You are all lives matter.
I don't want to so like or Lala down because I feel like I'm giving my all.
Wait, Isita.
So female can use the term female because we're reclaiming that term because it's been used in a derogatory term. So a female can call other female. I'm a female, but a man can call a female a female.
I will call you queen.
God forbid.
I'm gonna say in
I
those
can't
terms.
call you queen.
I don't use the N word. I don't use the N word. I don't believe in reclaiming it. I don't think it's an appropriate term. Period. That's the side note.
So just call you Lara. Don't call you a woman or lady.
So you guys don't, for the women, you guys don't like other people calling you females? Because me personally,
other men,
I honestly don't get it. I don't like men. I mean, if I'm talking to a female, never mind. Let me be quiet. Okay, I'm just asking a question.
We get your point.
But I personally don't like. I don't take it in a derogatory.
I've never understood how.
Yeah, I've never understood, but I mean, I want to hear your opinions, like ladies, because I honestly.
I think what I was told is that this one woman has said this to me.
We had on the pod. We had a girl on our podcast,
and she said, what she said was, female can refer to different species. Like there's a female dog, there's a female animals and stuff like that. But woman refers to like the human. And I said, okay. And I promise I've never said female since. Have I said female on this podcast? Hey, stuff.
I don't pet.
I'll go back.
Oh, what I was saying was, I don't think that everything. Girl, words usually are useful.
Very fun.
Next, I just had. We're gonna do this. I got it.
Breathe in and out.
I feel like it should be
slowly.
it should be equal. Like I don't think that it should be, because I keep hearing most of the solutions that I'm hearing is like more of the back end, and I feel like yes, they should be on the forefront of it. Just like at the beginning when we were talking about like the Martin Luther King wall. Granted, that wasn't for just male or female; it was for overall rights. But it's more powerful when everybody is involved. Like, and I understand that there's a difference between feminists and womanists. So like if there was like a Black women's march, if white people don't show up, then it's like, oh well, white people are not there to show up for us. And then if guys don't show up, then it's like, oh, guys are not there to show up for us. But then it's also just like, oh, but I don't want them to be the forefront. So I don't really understand. I kind of feel like then you're kind of making it seem like only Black women should be fighting for Black women rights, because you want the guys to be in the back end, just telling their homies at the bar like, oh no, don't call her a female.
We didn't say we didn't want their help. We didn't say that we didn't want them to be allies.
You said you wanted them to be more on the back end than the front. You said you don't want them to be the face of it.
We don't want them to co-opt the movement. That's like having a white man being the face of Black Lives Matter. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
But it should, because the overall goal is you want everybody. The white man is the one who is oppressing the Blacks. So it's like you want them to be able to talk to their people, or you want a white guy to be like, oh well, if that white guy is if that white guy is defending the Blacks, then maybe they will listen. You want everybody on your board. You just don't want Black females are not going to be able to help Black females get to where they got to go if they don't want the people who are the ones that are actually doing the harm to them not to also show up for them.
No, the oppressor cannot be the savior. The oppressor cannot be the face of the movement of the people.
The person who is on your side is not the oppressor just because they're the same complexion of the people. They are the ones who, they want to help. So if I want to help, why can't I help because my race doesn't allow that to happen?
You are not the visual representation of the marginalized, right? The people who are marginalized need to be at the forefront. Your voice, the person who is being oppressed, needs to be at the forefront of the movement. It doesn't mean that you can't help. It doesn't mean that you can't assist. It doesn't mean that your voice doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that your voice doesn't have power. But in terms of the face of the group, in terms of who's being heard the most, in terms of making sure that you're actually hearing the voices of the people who are going through the problem, those are the people who need to be at the forefront of the movement.
But for example, Ice Baby, you're I'm guessing from seeing you, you're able-bodied, right? Like you don't have any physical disabilities that I
put my finger in the fan when I was younger, so this finger turned.
Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. So you're able-bodied, right? So when a disabled person fights for the right, like fights for a right to have elevators and fights for the right for something to be reconstructed to accommodate them, right? You will not be in the forefront of, you will be by them or you will be beside them, but you will not be in the forefront for them because you as much as you empathize and you internalize their struggle, you can't really, go through the experience that they have felt. So as Nancy said, you're not taking away, you're more giving power to them, right? You're enabling them, right? You are giving them, you're being a bridge between allyship and other people who don't understand them, right? But you just can't be the forefront because that's their struggle.
Mm-hmm. But they're always going to have that struggle. So isn't it more useful to have somebody who is not struggling with them to be
right? And that's where you play a part. That's why allyship is so important. That's why allyship is so important, right? But you also have to know your boundaries as an ally.
I know my boundaries. Nora.
Lila, you want to go first?
I agree with what Nancy, Holly, Ashitu said.
I just say just educating people. I think what we did here for like a majority of the time we spent here is kind of like educating ourselves about certain things. Like, people put out their points of views, their perspectives, and then other people, gave some feedback. And and at the end of the day, I was personally educated about certain things. So just educating yourself, like, you can't, like, and even to the point of if you're trying to be like the forefront of a movement, you have to be educated. You can't just say I'm gonna help somebody if you're not educated about what the movement is, first of all, what the struggle is, and like what the goal is. So I feel like education is a large part. Because another thing we mentioned too at the beginning that I think like we didn't really spend a lot of time to talk about is that, like, if we're speaking specifically about women's rights and advocating for women, for men, I mean, like, some men are like, oh, I don't want the power. Just because you don't want the power doesn't mean you don't have it. It's something that's so innate that you don't even think, like, second guess. So it's like understanding your privilege, or your privilege in society, and being like, even though I didn't want it, because I'm a man, I have it. So it's like, how can I use that to help women?
What's the question?
So I didn't hear the first part of what you read because it cut out. So I only caught the tail end of it. So maybe somebody else starting might be good, and then I can like chime in after I hear what they're saying was said. Or why do you have to reread the whole thing?
Yeah, read again, please. Joe.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before, but I do somehow agree with that, in the sense that, yes, scientifically we are, created different and have different capacities, but this still kind of goes back to what I said, and I'm going to touch on what was mentioned also, in that, yes, for example, you said that men have certain powers whether they want them or not, but I think also it's kind of reverberates with not only Black women but Black people in general. We have certain powers that we also don't tend to acknowledge enough. We often talk about sometimes how there's victimhood that we often play, as far as a card. And I think we have to get more into the spirit of knowing that we are capable and able, irrespective of gender. I'm one of those people that believes, when we talk about isms, for example, that's Western stuff. That's, the more you kind of factionalize things, the more you spread yourself and the less impact that you actually have. For me, when I look at what's going on, and we talk about, as far as, the issues that need to be tackled, there's probably only 3 dominant issues, and it covers all of us as far as scope and all those isms. It's classism, elitism, and racism. Why do I say that? Classism, because the distinction between rich, middle class, and poor affects all of us. Elitism, those elite or otherwise sort of, I don't want to say marginalized groups, those groups that end up hoarding resources, whether it's the top 1% males, whether it's, whites, whatever. Racism actually encapsulates both of those things. So it's kind of overarching term. And I feel like if we actually tackle those things, irrespective of gender and all of that, we would get further I'm not saying that that negates the other issues, but we would be able to at least get further as a group so that internally all the isms that are distinct, we can still deal with them ourselves. But we have to at least believe that the power that we have is enough to solve the problems that we have too.
I'm sorry, please. There's so many things happening. So can we go back to what exactly the question is and what it's implying? Because the first statement alone has me very concerned. And then is it saying that because the assumption that biblical, it seems to be painting with a broad stroke that all biblical scholars don't consider men and women equal, and because of that, we are delegated to certain roles that we need to accept within society? Is that what is happening here? Is that what I'm understanding, or am I misunderstanding?
That kind of seems to be sort of the assumption, what I would assume. But then to counteract that, like the reality is that we're all created equal in the eyes of the Creator, if that's what we're going to. So like that statement kind of like just sort of stop there.
Okay, let me put it like this then. What I'm saying is that I said scientifically, as far as what we have the capacity to do physically. I didn't say
that's different. No, but we're like kind of going back to the beginning of AK's statement as well.
Okay.
Like if your friend is talking about like biblical scholars, then that kind of there's a bit of a,
what are they implying?
Yeah, it's a bit like, what are they? Because like it's hard to reconcile those two notions that we're all created equal with the Creator, but then no, we get physical differences. We get that, but the rest, it didn't make sense.
Okay, I'll let him clarify so we can go back to that point.
It says we're not created, if I'm not mistaken.
I think maybe it's just the rhetoric. Nancy, you in particular, I see your reaction. Maybe if they said the same versus equal, because I think that is like a trigger term. So anyway.
We got.
I mean, but you like.
What's your thoughts? You're being quiet. What do you think?
So do y'all think there are differences between men and women?
Physical differences, absolutely, but if we're talking about in the eyes of God, we're all created under the eye of God. Like where like the differences come in terms of the physical aspect. As a woman, I can give birth, I have cycles. As a man, you cannot. But as a man, there are certain things that you can do that I can't do. So it's like if we're talking about physical differences, absolutely. But if we're talking about like equal respect, equal ability to do or to be able to live a certain type of quality of life, then I feel like we all
and it also sounds like it's dismissing the issues of sexism and saying let's not focus on that, let's just focus on issues that we face together as a community, and not focusing on the issues that come with varying intersections. Like, and that's problematic. You can't dismiss the issues, the plight of Black women within the Black community. Like that is a subset issue that you need to focus on as well. Not saying that, we can't focus on issues of the community, but that has a time and a place. Yeah. And our issues have a time and place. Your issues as Black males have a time and a place. You can't just say, let's just dismiss those altogether and just focus on communal issues. Yeah, we can do that, but we have the capability to focus on
to process many. Yeah.
Out and
Well, I mean, the reality is that like all of these issues exist together. It's not like there's not like an isolated issue of like classism versus they all, and it's like they exist together. So we have to tackle them, you know, together. We can't just say once we get the Black community financially stable, then that will like trickle down. Like that doesn't work. If you solve one problem, it doesn't mean you're solving another problem because they all exist like together. So I mean, that's what you take time. You're like, you identify this problem. This is what's happening. Let's find a way to solve this. You identify this other problem. Let's say, but it's not like if you solve the financial problem of the Black community, everything's wiped out. That's not possible. No.
You can't talk about racism without talk about classism, without talk about economic. You can't talk about racism without like thinking about the subcategoristic of how Black people are being oppressed. Like racism is just the umbrella, and what's underneath racism.
Yeah.
And the first statement is bothering me.
Oh, I think.
No, AK, we're not fighting you. We're definitely not fighting you. There's nobody. We're just saying that like us like Joe made like, you know, like a specific statement, and we're just saying that like these other things exist together. Nobody's saying that like, oh, you should know them. Like he's explained his point of view, and then we've also explained our point of view, and we're saying that these things exist together. Nobody. I don't think there's anybody fighting. We're just communicating our different sorts of points of view about specific topics.
Can I say something? Nah, I just want to say, yeah, it is a lot of things that need. I mean, sexism. Oh yeah, I agree. That is a thing. Ageism is a thing. Yeah, there are isms that exist, and I feel as though we shouldn't minimize, you know, anyone's plight. You know. So in terms of you ladies, you are correct in that regards. So we cannot, you know, diminish the fact that sexism is a thing that actually impacts, you know, it does impact people's lives. That's all I wanted to add. Carry on.
If I see myself as a Black male separate from these like top 1% Anglo-Saxon males, I like the way I view it. I kind of see it all coming from the same problem, you know. So again, which is why I emphasize that like we should spend more time trying to build alliances and build bridges in order to attack this big issue. Because even when you look at the 60s and the plights and issues, the Emmett Tills, all that type of stuff, there were a lot of issues centered around protecting Black women and all these physical assaults and stuff like that too. And I know there's a lot of other issues going on underneath that, but it's like, yeah, like I do see that though. Like that is like a big 50 million foot giant. And like, how do you even, you know what I'm saying, attack that? If you divide our group up, like what can you even accomplish?
Well, you guys, I don't think we're necessarily dividing our group up. We're just identifying certain problems within our group that disproportionately affect certain people. So women or Black women have problems within the Black community that are different for Black men. It's not necessarily like separating Black women from the larger group, but just identifying that those problems plague Black women more. It's an issue that Black women have to shoulder the burden of more. So it's like, let's find a way to also tackle or deal with that while we're also dealing with other problems as the greater Black community. It's not like a separate, like it would be a separate if, like, you know, we're arguing that like one issue is more important than the other, then I would be like, okay, then that's like an issue like separation or something.
I agree with you.
Can I say something really quick before I head back? In regards to that last question in particular, the prompt that he read, I kind of feel like I'm not understanding why they're separating. They're trying to separate the gender thing from all the other social issues in the community. In my opinion, I feel like the issue that women are dealing with and fighting for also inadvertently affects all the other social issues going on in the community, like poverty and, you know, the homes being broken. The fact that women aren't making, you know, the amount of money that they should be in their careers, if they're in a single household where they're caring for the whole family and they're the only main support and they're not making the money they should, that's affecting the whole unit, like socioeconomic status, like it all works together. Like the women's plight is in that group with all the other social issues in the community. And it is important for everybody to come together and unify and fight to ratify all of these issues, but that issue's still in there. You can't take it out and say, let's fight for all these other issues and then we'll get back to the issue of women's rights. It's in there with it. And it's important not to separate it and just focus on that, because all the other issues are so very important. And that's like, for me personally, I kind of focus on the picture as a whole. Like, we need to ratify all these issues. Like, none of it is right. And so instead of focusing on just one thing, and I know it's a lot, it's like, let's look at each of them, how they affect each other, how it trickles down. How can we like affect change at all these different levels, instead of just like taking things out and like saying like, oh, let's focus on this and not that. So taking out the gender issue from all the other social issues doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like they're all issues that are all affecting all the social issues that were mentioned in that prompt. So let's look at it and attack all of it together, all the injustices, all the inequality. Let's not separate it.
Yeah. And also like we all have people that like have their areas of speciality.
Yep.
So like what we need to do is now get all those people that have like special emphasis in certain areas together to talk about it. So we have like a roundtable discussion, talk like I've studied in depth about women's issue, Black women's issue. You studied in depth about the financial issue in the Black community. Like let's talk about that so that it's not just because like, you know, one person can't really like be able to pick up on the intricacies of every group. So it's important to have us all that we've all had our areas of specialty to talk.
Unity is so important.
Unity.
On that note, guys, I don't have to leave, but I do have to get back to the desk. My coverage only lasts until 9 o'clock. So
thank you
for having me, guys. Thank you for letting me be part of this discussion.
Thanks, girl.
Yeah.
You said it.
Thank you.
If I get sick, I want to check in your hospital.
Bye, guys.
I'm so serious. Hey, send your.
I like we didn't even talk about the patriarchy. Talk about that.
Hey, AK, keep it going. Keep it going.
It's not the day for that. That's all right.
Keep it going.
We're talking about women.
AK, keep it going.
Wait, I have a question, Joe. I was watching the session last time, and there was I have notes, y'all. There was a statement that was made, and I just wanted you to
clarify.
Try to see if you can reconcile the two statements. One of them was a quote by you, and then the other was a statement by another individual. And like you guys said it kind of back to back, but I didn't feel like I felt like they were whatever. So basically, you said a quote about I think it was you. You said a quote about women being the like the creators of workforce, like women birthing a workforce, and then somebody else tried to piggyback off you. But then the point of pregnancy making women a liability in the workplace.
That was
And so
Dan.
when I put those two statements together, I was just like, those.
No. We were not on the same page. I didn't say that women were a liability.
No, I know you didn't.
Yeah,
That's why I said there was nothing
I'm
individual.
answering
But
your
like,
question.
if you guys were in that same segment, those two statements kind of like counter, like you know,
Yeah.
like they weren't.
I just quoted a woman that said that.
Right.
She's the one who said that. I was just putting my point forward and saying that I can understand where she's coming from in saying that women's issues are so central because they have such a large spread impact, probably more than just, you know, in the home or whatever. They are literally, you know, creating workforces, as it were. What he said as far as the liability, I can't really speak on that because that was his point. But for the most part, I wouldn't consider a woman to be a liability in that sense. That he was basing it more so on like economic value in the workplace, which even that argument in itself doesn't really make sense. You can kind of nitpick it and say, well, if she's gone for this period or whatever, but that's a whole nother story.
So I would say America, the capitalist system in itself is too obsessed with draining every bit of productivity out of every single person as a worker, right? And those of us that are at the bottom of the economic class suffer the worst, right? And so I would like to add a point. I am not taking away from the women's struggle at all, because I agree. It has nothing, like, I agree that maternally it's huge. Like, it's totally important. It is not a liability. That's one of the most stupid things. But I will say that in the workplace, me being a professional and all that, I see that when it comes to men who are very closely knit in their families, they don't get paternal leave. Like, there's not a lot of consideration for that either. They have to take out of their personal pot of leave and things like that. And what I see is that those Anglo-Saxons that are at the top have so much leave and so high salary, it's not an issue for them. But then when it comes to people in our social group, our age, our demographic, we suffer too. So I'm just saying that that's another issue where it's like, yo, like, we can help each other, like, we can look at it eye to eye. So let's not miss those opportunities when we just continuously, like, you know, bump ahead.
Yeah, but I thought
firsthand, you know.
Yeah, but I thought like that was kind of like to my point. Like, it's something we need to work on, because I feel like if we're talking about a family, the mom and dad is not only a burden of the woman, like in terms of like fighting for maternity leave. We also need paternity leave, because as a woman, if you're just giving birth, you need that male support. So if that is an issue where we can both work together to be like, yo, for the sake of the family, for the sake of the unit, then like, yo, we need to work together on that. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I wasn't insinuating any of you guys were against me on that point either. I was just raising topics.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Hi! Tongue has taken over. Hi! Yahunde has taken over. Douala has taken over.
He's not a Douala, he's a Bamenda boy. Don't disrespect him like that. Ah!
Lara, spare me, please. That's all I'm saying. Please.
I am okay. Black women liberation and women liberation in general is very important, because as we see that it doesn't only affect the woman, but it affects the family, and the family, the man is included in the family, and it affects the community, the neighborhood, and people around them. So I think we as a people, we as Black people, that's including me, myself, I'm including myself in society. We need to do better in advocating for a women's right. We need to do better in recognizing these are intersectional personalities and characteristics that people think that separate us, but actually bind us closer to each other. And we just need to do better in advocating. So that's my popcorn.
I mean, like, or we just, what are we talking about? We just talk about anything? Because it's like, the clothing. I mean, don't.
Slapper.
I think like spaces, I always say this, like spaces and platforms like yours that give like women the opportunity, like Lala and I, we're writing a series on growing up African, basically, like, you know, the experiences of young women, children, young girls, and women in African households, and some of like the experiences, and sort of calling out certain toxic behaviors so that like we can do better. I think, you know, platforms like Stuck in the Middle podcast that allow for us to have a platform to voice that opinion are really important. It's kind of it. We just need platforms to speak on so that like we can get our messages across.
Hey, that one will be
Can't
spicy.
miss. That's a can't miss episode, man.
I need a date for that because I must put it in my calendar.
I have to turn on my AC.
Not only my calendar, but
I would need the two fans on me.
My Google Doc calendar. Please.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I just want to challenge both sides just after hearing the full conversation. I think what I'm hearing the Black men say to the Black women, because this is a space for us, is to just be more gracious in our approach. Not that we owe them that, but if we want to, you know, garner an ear, I think we need to be more gracious with our brothers in how we deliver our message. And for the men, I think I want to challenge you guys to, even though you feel as though our approach may be a bit too aggressive or may come off as dismissive, even if that's not our intention, I think you need to understand that our pain is valid, right? So, and we are entitled to express our pain in the way we see fit. So I'm challenging you guys. I want to challenge you guys to kind of see through that and see past that, and understand that because we are the same people, we are Black people, and that we need to stand up for each other. We need to fight for each other. That you can just look past that a little bit and you know, work with us as allies, because we do need you. As a womanist, I believe women need men and men need women. So that would be my message.
Nancy?
Well said.
Well said. You gotta say
Let's
that.
talking more
Say
action.
that.
sis.
Say that.
I'm here for
Say
it.
that. Say that. Say that.
That's yeah, it was
Support.
Oh, Isata, you are mute.
I can't hear you.
she's talking about.
Oh.
Your volume's probably really low.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, y'all. So I'm going to conduct the rest of my video later. I don't know. Why can't you hear me? Is it because it's on my bed? I don't
Oh, we can hear you
We can hear
now.
you now.
Sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't really have much to say. I'm sorry.
Your final thoughts. You are punching on your
That's a
final
typical salon answer for you right there.
You talk, yeah, done.
Done.
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, just be nicer to people. Feel like, you know, just be a decent human being all around. And I feel like if you do it, put your back into it, support everyone, so everybody just has a peaceful. I really just don't know, y'all. I'm sorry.
Wow.
It's okay.
The quarantine is getting to you.
I'm telling you, I don't know if I'm hot or cold. I'm just bothered over here. There's a lot
hot,
going
hot flashes. Take it easy, my dear.
But yeah, just like, you know, yeah, because everybody has their own, and obviously everybody goes through their own like personal things, their own hashtag ism things, but like let everybody just support everybody, be a good person, make sure the people around you are good people, and hopefully that just trickles like a snowball of good things and good, I don't know,
I'm with you.
I said let's talk in more action. Period.
Hey,
That's that.
Bam.
Y'all better stop doing my jobs like that.
T.
This is so quiet today. Wow.
I know. What's going on? I'm concerned.
I just want to make sure I keep the peace. There's a lot of people that I know that are watching this platform. They really like it. They like what the discussion, and they appreciate the intellectual dialogue. So I wanted to make sure I did my part. I do want to say this though. Earlier when we were talking about solutions, Fem Dizzle kind of mentioned that he had a organization that he started with young women through his church. And I definitely want to donate to that, brother. So let me know what you need and I got you. And if you need my physical labor, if you need me to be there, I'll be there for that as well. Is there anybody else that has anything that they're doing that I can donate to or even give my services to?
Yeah, we can talk about that on the side. On the side. We can talk about that on the side.
Melanated fathers, you know what I'm saying?
You can subscribe to my YouTube channel.
I got you.
Oh, you're having a YouTube.
You with the most?
We didn't know you're having a YouTube. You didn't say.
I was going to do that when we closed out. We got to finish the remarks and then we're going to do all that.
Okay. Got you. That's.
Hey, brother. Oh, you said y'all go ahead, Moon, man.
Yo, I'm just saying, to the ladies out there, just it's 2020. There's a new age modern African man out here. There's a futuristic black man out here.
Oh,
shout out to Roz Neville. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's a lot of us that have different experiences. As I said, I'm Ashanti, from Ghana. I had this debate with an Ethiopian lady who was actually a feminist, and she was telling me about how her father and her grandfather, they talk about their lineage and stuff all through the perspective of men. Mm-hmm. And when I was just like, boom, well, guess what? I'm from a matrilineal culture. We track everything through our grandmothers and all that stuff. And it really impacts how I see the world. Mm-hmm. He was just like, wow, Flora. Wow. Mm-hmm. When we go back to Ghana, as I did last December, year of return, and we trace our roots, and I go back to the remote towns in the Ashanti region, we go to visit the Queen Mothers. You understand what I'm saying? So like, it's the way that I see the world that really impacts that. You know what I'm saying? As I reach back, as I put a high emphasis on culture. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that I'm not saying I'm still a guy, right? And I have unconscious biases in my mind, but as you tell them to me, you give me the power to knock them down and to see the world in a better way, right? So let's not miss that opportunity. So just leave space for the new age brothers out here. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
all what I'm saying.
Shoot your shot.
Some of you guys, but it's okay. But it's okay.
Check out Africanus podcast. You know what I'm saying? Check out Africanus podcast. AK stuck in the middle. Y'all are brothers, man. Y'all keep it moving, man. Y'all keep doing the work, bro. We love y'all. Always. We always support you.
Yo.
Yes.
I have a question. Where's the
Okay.
Hey man, it's been a pleasure, being on this platform. I don't take it for granted, my brother. Appreciate you. Appreciate this dialogue. I think it's always good when we, just get to learn from one another. Closing remarks, man. Brother Aziz, thank you again for saying you're going to support my cause, because I'm just, I love the people, man, you feel me? And I love my black women, you feel me? Because I was raised by a black woman, you feel me, brother? And on that note also, actually, I'll be dropping a book, later this year. So stay tuned for that. It's actually a self-help book for women.
I'm here for all of women.
That's how much I love the ladies. The brothers might think I'm snitching on y'all, but it is no snitching. It's no snitching. I just love the women that much that I've actually been working on this since 2013. So it's been a it's my baby. Yeah, it's taken me a while, but we here. So be on the lookout for that, and also melanated fathers, because you gotta look out for the.
Like a think like a man type of book.
That's why I said go ahead, Steve Harvey.
That's messed up. That's messed up. I see, baby. That's messed
We have questions.
You know, that's nah. This ain't
If it's a Steve Harvey book,
this ain't no think like a man because think like a man. I think that's not realistic.
That's sexist.
I spoke on something because like I said, I'm a mental health therapist, and I see this. I'm more privy to what's going on and what women are actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And me also being a man, I'm able to speak from, I have that experience, so I'm able to kind of bridge the gap in order to bring solutions, real, attainable solutions that I feel like will lead to more healthy relationships for women. So that's what that's about. Stay tuned. I think you will like it or love it. I hope so. But again, melanated fathers, man. Stay tuned. Dropping a documentary on the plight of the Black father. You know what I'm saying? Because I love how this platform we were able to just discuss Black women. But I also started a foundation for Black fathers. I feel like we marginalize. We don't get talked about. They don't put they don't even got changing tables for the fathers in the bathroom. Like we don't change our babies. You feel me? Which but that's just a little bit. But stay tuned. Documentary coming out.
I'm here for you, bro. You can teach me how, bro. I'm here for you, bro.
I got you, baby. I got you, man. I got you. We out here again. AK, thank you, brother, and ladies. Thank you for putting up with me.
Joe, we want to hear your wisdom.
They are wanting Joe.
AK, it's time for Joe to talk. Please, thank you. AK, it's time for Joe to talk.
Yeah, we on YouTube. Just started quarantine. We started putting up our video episodes there. We were doing side projects there before, but yeah, we up there. Yeah.
We stand for Joe.
The people's champion.
Stand.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Champion.
close it the way it should be closed, and I'm just gonna say that we did all our talking. So from here on out, it's all about action. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Period.
I'm gonna drop my cash app.
That's what it is.
Hey Joe, are you African?
Yes, Congolese, born American to Congolese parents, grew up in South Africa.
What them hips do?
Hey,
excuse me.
Who said that?
Don't objectify him.
Are you sexualizing Joe? Are you sexualizing Joe?
That was toxic.
As a man, I feel like you are just objectifying.
Let Joe speak for himself. He has a voice.
Oh, but
Joe speak for himself. He has a
men can
voice.
speak for other women, but I can't speak for my fellow.
No,
brother.
Femi, no, Joe, you have a voice. You need to know you have a voice.
But I'm an ally of Joe.
Femi, not every day Zanku and Shaku Shaku. Let the voice talk.
I'm an ally.
These Nigerians will not kill us. Ah.
I'm good, man.
Handsome.
It's a brotherhood.
That's the reflex.
Yes, support.
Oh yeah, I
Yes,
have mine right here.
yes, support that man. I just caught my book on his his birthday yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna order that tonight, bro. And questions.
must be there.
Oh, these things at this point.
I must be there.
We are qualified.
Don't do us like that. Mm-mm.
We have tribes too.
Left fam.
Oh yeah, what our friends saying?
How crap.
Where can we see it?
Yeah, can we see the comments?
If you guys were on the Facebook Live on another
Put the
device,
link
yeah.
in the.
Oh, they were going in?
Yeah, they were going in.
Oh my God. I was not prepared.
They
You
said,
didn't
they said somebody is problematic.
Oh, it's probably you from.
The very quiet post.
Yeah, Wendy Ambo is goosing you in the comments.
I mean, I'm used to that, bro. You know, we part of it. We part on time. You know what I'm saying?
They are goosing you in the comments.
You know what I'm saying? Ghana, Gold Coast, bro. This is my culture, bro.
Here you go. That's that Ghana mentality.